First, I would like to start this video off by saying that I have thoroughly enjoyed this course. It has really challenged me and opened up my mind. I feel like this was one of the more informative courses that I've taken since I've been at CSU. It was very interesting to read on the different topics and find the truth out about some of the things that I had believed and had grown up thinking that were true. So the first thing that I want to talk about is spanking. So growing up, I myself was not spanked, but I grew up around people who that would be their punishment whenever they did anything wrong, especially young children. They would always get spanked and then put in timeout, or if timeout didn't work, they would get spanked. And that's where I thought that this was justifiable, that if a child did something and they didn't listen to the parent, that spanking was okay. From doing research and from reading the textbook, I have found that this is not true. I have found that spanking causes some mental illnesses in children as they grow up. It's not as effective as putting a child in timeout or as positive reinforcement. I've also learned that by spanking a child, some children grow up to later go on to enter into abusive relationships. And for me personally, I would never want my child to fear me as a parent and feel like they can't come to me because they're afraid that I'll harm them. And I wouldn't want them to not know their self-worth and later enter into a relationship where they are then abused. So some solutions to spanking that I found were positive reinforcement. That was a big thing that was talked about in the book and in the research that I did outside of the book. Spanking leads into my second topic, which were tantrums. I guess they kind of go hand in hand. I thought that when a child threw a tantrum, it was okay to spank them because throwing a tantrum is a no-no. And through my research, I found out that it's okay for children to throw control tantrums when there isn't anything seriously bothering them or going on, because this allows the child to know what a tantrum feels like, so that when they're in a situation where they're angry, they won't necessarily throw a tantrum. A control tantrum allows the parent to learn how to effectively discipline the child. So from this course, I'm taking on the fact that I personally would like to incorporate control tantrums into my children's life so that it better builds my relationship with my children and our disciplinary actions. Another thing that I learned was allowing babies to cry. So growing up in my family, a lot of times when children cry, you don't want to spoil them or you don't want them to get too attached, so you just let a baby cry it out. And in the earlier chapters of this book, we learned that that's not okay. Crying is indeed a good sign of on-track development, but children shouldn't just be neglected and left to cry alone. So some of the coping mechanisms that they mentioned in the book were the skin-to-skin routine. So this is where when the baby's crying uncontrollably, you just pick up the child and put the child on your chest or just somewhere where it has skin contact so that it feels secure. So skin-to-skin contact will definitely be something that I incorporate with my children. Another big thing that was mentioned in the earlier chapters were co-sleeping with the parents. And I believe this was true because I co-slept with my parents, but my sister and I are 7 years apart. And now looking back, I realized that she didn't co-sleep with my parents. So in the readings, I learned that the research on co-sleeping with a parent or with parents is still inconclusive, but that the better option is to co-room with the parent or room share with the parent versus bed sharing. So when I have children, I definitely want to keep a healthy relationship with my mate. And in the book, it talked about how sometimes bed sharing can put a toll on those relationships with your partner, and I don't want that for me or my partner. I want us to remain a unit and do what's best for our children. So I think that room sharing will be best for me in the future and for my children, and it will also help with breastfeeding, which I feel as though is one of the most nutritional ways for a child to get the nutrients that they need. And the last thing that I would like to talk about today is difficult children. So I always notice that my sister and I, who I mentioned we're 7 years apart, have completely different temperaments, and I would say we're completely opposite. Growing up, I didn't really get in trouble a lot, but she was always in trouble. I was more of an easygoing child. She was more of a difficult child, and she often got in more trouble than I did because of her temperament. But so I thought that it was okay, or I didn't really understand, I would say, the concept of treating your children differently, because I would definitely say that my sister and I got treated differently, or she would get lesser punishments because of me, or less harsh punishments than I, because my parents didn't want to push her away, I guess. So I learned that there are different attachment styles, which leads into the different temperament styles. So knowing your child's attachment style and temperament can help you to better tailor your parenting style for that child. So the different attachment styles, you have the secure attachment, and then you have insecure attachment. And insecure attachment is broken down into avoidance, disorganized, and the anxious categories. And I realized that both my sister and I had a secure attachment style, but I think our temperaments were different, because I would rate me as more of an easygoing child, where she was more difficult. So I think it's very important to know the different styles for a child to help parent them. So for me, this has been very interesting and eye-opening for me. I don't think it was necessarily difficult to change my views on anything in particular, because I do consider myself a open-minded person, especially because I want what's best for me and my family and me and my future kids. So I'm open to knowing the best coping mechanisms, the best ways to raise them, so that I can give them the best that I have to offer. So I definitely would recommend this class to anyone, because it's an eye-opener and it's very informative, and I appreciate this course for enlightening me on all the different ways that I can raise a family in the future and to better live my life and go into a successful death.